Santa Cruz County has a vast variety of property types. One of the areas that I specialize in is mountain properties. I lived in the mountains for a long time, and it just brings a different type of lifestyle that you really appreciate. So here's how to buy a mountain property in Santa Cruz County. Consider your commute. It is going to be different if you're coming from living more central in the city versus living out in the mountains. It just adds distance by nature. You just plan your day a little bit different. If it takes you 20 minutes to get from your house to the store and then another 20 minutes to get back, if you forgot that milk and you're back home, you're likely not going to go back that evening. If that fits your lifestyle, if that's something you're comfortable with, that's great. The second is you want to consider your access. So you're going to want to start to get a little bit more comfortable with maybe driving a vehicle with a little bit higher of a clearance, right? If you live in a canyon or if you live down a single lane gravel road, sometimes rocks, debris, branches, they're going to fall on the road. You got to get comfortable with what to do in that type of situation, especially in storms. So we live in Santa Cruz County. We had a devastating fire not too long ago where a number of people lost their homes. So fire and fire prevention should be top of mind. So when you live in the mountains, always consider, how do you get in? How do you get out? Is there more than one access point? Is there more than one way out? See, these are all the fun points to consider when you're buying in the mountains. I like buying a property during the winter. I like being able to see if the roof is leaking or where the water goes on the hillside. Which brings me to the fourth item, which is general maintenance, right? Number one, with hillsides, where your property sits on the hillside and where the water is going to go. Especially if there is a history of flooding on the property. You're also going to want to keep in mind how close the trees are to the house and if they overhang the house at all. Also what that means to your gutters and to your roof in general. You know, there are some maintenance pieces that are important. Next is consider the sun. So the fifth is to consider the sun exposure. I represent a lot of clients and their first comment is always, I want great sun. With the dynamics of living in the mountains and how the sun works and the different ways it can hit the property and what blocks it and this and that and the canopy of trees, it's kind of complicated. Try and consider what the sun is going to be like in all different times of the year. When I'm representing buyers, I tell them, oh my gosh, you are buying in the best time if they are buying in the winter because you see it with the worst amount of sun. And also, sometimes you'll see it in some of the worst weather. Next, you're gonna wanna consider what you want to do on the property. This comes up all the time. People wanna build family compounds, or sometimes people want to build these oasis retreats as somewhat of a business opportunity. So this is super important. If you have specific needs that you have at a property that is outside what it is currently being used for, highly recommend talking to a land use consultant to be sure what you want to do with the property you actually can do, because a lot of times that's dependent upon the zoning on the property, the size of the property, where the water is on the property. It can have a lot of moving factors, so that's really key. The last and most important, especially with a mountain property, is to read the disclosures. Read them, read the ones that are presented to you, and if there are not, or if you have any questions whatsoever, have your own reports. Much of the time, you're going to have septic tanks, possibly wells, and these are big items if something goes wrong. So it's also important to make sure that you have a pest inspection, because that doesn't just talk about termites. It's not just a termite inspection. It'll talk about dry rot, which is really important in a mountain property because moisture can stay kind of trapped. And so sometimes you'll see a lot of damage due to that. There just comes more maintenance and you got to keep up on it. And that's important information when you're buying a property to keep in mind. I cannot express to you how important it is to have a septic inspection when buying in the mountains, because the septic alone, first of all, handles a big thing, important stuff, and it can be very expensive, complicated, and time-consuming to fix them. But keep in mind, septics aren't something to be afraid of. I mean, if you keep up the proper maintenance, you should be okay. Also, really keep in mind the well. That's your water source. So if there isn't one provided to you, you definitely want to get a well inspection to see how much production there is, and also the water quality to make sure, you know, if you need to treat the water that you are drinking. Really tried to keep this one short, and I don't think I did that, but I could go on and on and on. There is so much to learn. If you want to set up a consultation or you have any other questions, reach out to us. We're happy to talk. Don't get that in the mountains.